argument again is that the only thing that adds substance and meaning to life is to be able to practice your religion. We think it still stands on our side because at no point of time have we argued for the Uyghurs to give up their religious identity. All we've argued for is for you to be able to adapt yourself in a way that is acceptable to the Chinese. And to that, our example about the Catholics in China becomes very, very important. Is they try to trivialize by telling you that, look, they are a holy religion who practices Chinese Patriotic Association. Look, they are not holy because what is the distinction that exists on both sides of the world regarding the Catholics in China? There are two kinds of Catholics in China, one who are able to now safely practice their religion as well as integrate with the state, and one who now resist the Chinese government and therefore face its ire. That argument is very, very valid in this debate because we've proven to you how social integration has worked in the interest of a community and therefore is a valid example in this debate for the Uyghur Muslims. Go on.
You can't say that you'll still have your religion in your side because the motion is explicit with the freedom of community. And you have to withhold the preservation of religion or way of life to all your other lives.
The motion is explicit in saying that you will now move towards greater integration in Chinese society at the cost of your way of life. What is the change which my first speaker categorically spells out for you? You will not sport a beard in public, you will not wear a hijab to school, you will not call out for the azan in public, and you will also not go ahead and actively rally for your own language, for your own education in your own religious schools. That is something that we specifically told you. But the premise of that argument is that some people might value praising Allah more than getting education. Some people might value realizing the religion more than being able to get a job. We think that's a very valid argument to make. Except, who are and what are the priorities of the greatest number of people? Because this debate is about the universal principle, and we think poverty, we think the ability to educate yourself is a universal requirement for all people over and above your prioritization of the value of being able to reach out to God. Right? But the last argument, and that is the most important thing in this debate, is what will be able to get China to listen to you. The first argument for that is China will listen to you because China is entangled in different parts of its territory. We don't think the Uyghur Muslim community is significant enough to be able to bring out China's resource crunch in terms of allocating its military. China does not require its military to persecute you. It persecutes you through civil policy by not allowing you to be able to access municipal rights. All right. But the second argument is that China will now be internationally coerced into listening to you. The backing for that is that Uyghur Muslims are receiving as much attention as Rohingya Muslims. That's a blatant lie. They haven't given you the example of one state which has put forward aid for the Uyghur Muslims, not the example of one state which has chosen to accept Uyghur Muslims and give them support in their own country. No examples, simply comparing two states which are simply not similar. But the third argument in that is, look, China's image is changing and therefore globalization is going to make China listen to you and become tolerant of religions. Let's understand that point at two levels. If China is moving towards globalization, it simply means that the Western world is now going to be more accepting of China. By extension of that, it is also going to be willing to forgive China's sins in order to be able to get the benefits of trade with China. If that is true, the US, Europe will now not go ahead and call out China because they are getting the trade benefits from China. Therefore, the only place that stands for international support is the Muslim communities, which have not supported you so far. No argument on that as well. Last argument is simply this. All right. We will get support from China because we will also practice violence. That they haven't proven to you because even non-violent protests, like 25 years ago in Tiananmen, was flushed by China. If China responds to non-violent protests like that, they haven't proven to you why violent protests will work to get out any benefits from China as they haven't in the last so many years. With that, very, very proud.
The problem of government side is that up until the government of speech, they're working upon an extremely unrealistic comparative that either China's totalitarian persecution will either eliminate all culture and life, or that China will somehow allow for a smooth social integration to concede economic opportunities so long as they can practice their religion in private or integrate their religion to the government. In both scenarios, we want to be very clear from opposition that religion, your way of life, and the way that you live is contingent on how you can genuinely practice that if it is constantly defended and protected. And that is what we have proven from opposition. There are two short look at this debate. Number one, what is most important for the Uyghurs? And two, what strategy must the Uyghurs use to fulfill their interests? Number one, what is most important for the Uyghurs? This issue is essential to this debate because their primary outcomes of the protection against violence, against active bloodshed, are contingent on the value of identity being secondary to life and economic opportunities. Note here that DBM's spin on this internally is that, oh, persecution on this is that you'll always be freed from the forcing of you being able to assimilate with the Uyghur culture, because you'll always have to choose culture or life, and you'll always want to choose life because of the economic prosperity and all the different things that you'll be able to choose from this. But even then, the value of this dichotomy and the comparative that government side is premising all of their case on is only proven insofar as the survival of their basic employment and marriage is comparatively better than the absolute tyranny that they will always get under China. Note that this is only going to be a comparison that is dependent upon the convenient characterization and the shifting characterizations on how China will react and will always work against the Uyghur people. Because either they will be extreme in their persecution against these individuals, which is what Prime Minister said, that they will always be religious fundamentalists and radical individuals that will never be able to socially integrate with us, or either that we will have an us versus them narrative, or you can be reasonable and somehow have an economic opportunity, live commonly with all of them, and suddenly live at peace so long as they can practice in private. We believe these two characterizations cannot coexist insofar as they want to prove the extreme value of the benefit of government side, that they will always have good marriage, they will always have a good job, or that they will always have the basic necessities of life, because that life was not proven to be valuable insofar as they have proven that argument. There were several ways the opposition side reconciled this issue. Number one, given that they have characterized that China is paranoid of the religious fundamentalism and radicalism of these Uyghurs, this dilutes the effectivity of the greater social integration of their model, because either it will lead to more discrimination and more surveillance, or it will lead to the sacrifice of their habits and their way of life. They all always have to make that dichotomy in every day of life. The habits, the consciousness of individuals, the ways that they move, go and assimilate and make social relations with other individuals are always dichotomies that they will always be made to make. So the elimination of choice, the elimination of the basic enablers of life is always taken away from government side, even in the best case of social integration. They said that no, this is a reason for the Uyghurs to make the value judgment that life is more important because it means that they can get employment or that they can just avoid death. But in either world, the Uyghurs have always lived in constant poverty, have always lived under constant fear. They have always lived under persecution and have never been able to make that decision no matter what. They have always made the decision that their religion and their way of life has always been important, because the struggle to protect their religion and their life is inseparable from that way of life. And we believe that is made extremely important from opposition, because the way that they define life itself is defined by that way of life, and that choice is constantly made. And they can't just say that no, they're forced to that Uyghur culture as well, because even that choice is dependent on that protection of life and how they have assimilated with all of their communities, etc., etc. So that employment, that ability for you to have a good marriage is still not compared against the radical changes they are making in our model. What we prove here is that life for the Uyghurs is inseparable from their culture, and that when this is compared to the life of constant fear and persecution under the government, this is harmful. To be abused by your husband who is Han from a Han race, to be told to tell others where you've been, to be secured and surveilled by the government as to where you will go, as to what churches you've been to, as to where you've been able to go to. The concession to the government, specifically in his speech, that you can privately practice your religion, that you can somehow hide it in the underground, is not possible under greater social integration, because they themselves said that the surveillance of China is dependent upon the total elimination of choice, that all of your habits are constantly manipulated in the ways that they have hacked your phones, that they have hacked all of your habits, how they have hacked every single part of your consciousness through the ways they have shown propaganda, taught you in schools, and everything that you have done. So you cannot co-opt that benefit of having religion, because it is dependent on you being able to take that away. This is different from having an integrated religion with the state, because even on that metric, that integrated religion is dependent upon the total elimination of that choice as well. So they cannot make that dichotomy. Secondly, note that there are two characterizations here. No, thank you. If you have a totalitarian China, the best case of government side is that that life is meaningless, and that in our model, choice is only taken away insofar as China will kill them off. So in either world, they will be persecuted and they will lose lives. But at least in our worst case, the defense from Nacho's speech that religion is more important for these individuals is that even with resistance, the way of life is a struggle that is inseparable from the value of that life. That is why insurgencies in the 1960s for the Tibetan people was important to protect the preservation of religion, even if it comes at the cost of life. And that was the dichotomy for the negotiations that came in the future, because that was the leverage they had. The resistance to protect the religion, the resistance to protect themselves in the future. Secondly, or thirdly and lastly, if we follow the characterization, therefore, that China is reasonable and it will negotiate, we know that this culture war is only valuable insofar as it gives economic benefits for China, insofar as there are economic incentives for them to build infrastructure, build economic relations, and all these different things. In this context, we think that opposition's model is superior because the constant threat of oppression, the constant threat of suppression, all these different things is always worse for the constant economic stability of China, especially the insurgencies, bomb threats, and all these different things are things we will always go through. So a long cultural war is something we will never opt into no matter what. Government's best response was that, oh, you can have subsidies, you can have tax breaks, you have all these different things and marriage incentives. But no, up until government whip, there's been no operationalization as how these marriages, these tax breaks, these subsidies will always lead to a more comparatively better economic life that can overly compare against the cultural benefits of preserving that life. Because even up until the point of death, we believe that protection of life and culture is always more important because the option to believe in your faith is different from the elimination of that faith. For all this and more, I'm very proud of those.
Ladies and gentlemen, I think that the reward previous debate that didn't use assertions to prove their beliefs, but rather gave us reasons to believe why X or Y actor will act in a certain way that they will. I think there's two questions, and we generally agreed upon it in this way. First, what is the most important interests of these believers? Because we've told you it is okay if they die in our set house because there are things more important than life. What was the response? Their response was to say, well, it's okay for them because they're willing to give up their religion anyway. But if you look at their analysis, there was nothing compared to Desert House to prove why they're willing to give up their religion. Compare that to the two structural reasons I provided in my speech. First, I told you that the very opposition movement of Uyghurs right now has socialized them to believing that their religion is more important than their right to life. Their schools have taught them that, their history has taught them that as well. So it's very unlikely they'll just believe the narrative and they'll change the religion. But secondly, because the nuance to the Uyghurs who are Muslims, that the religion has heavy anti-blasphemy laws, which means that changing your religion is far less likely to happen because you're afraid of perpetual condemnation, perpetual hell. So we would suggest on the desk of the house that the fear of damnation, the fear of betraying your right to life, the fear of betraying your community is far greater than the harms that they get for economic benefits on their desk of the house. That is why they're very unlikely to change under our side. But the second reason I said in my speech was we have to weigh the benefits for the Uyghur. Because we told you, at best, they are speculative in government bench. Because they asserted that they will get the change. We said that the change is very unlikely to take place because even if we practice the same cultures, China is racist in the way that they perpetuate the Han ethnic majority, and Uyghurs will never look like that. They never responded to this point. What they did was assert that Catholics on their desk at the house were integrated in society. I had to show how they're very unlikely to be integrated. They have to practice a holy religion. But secondly, I told you this is unresponsive because the Catholics on their side also are members of the Han majority and are irrelevant to the point. So we're uncertain if they'll be able to get the benefits under their side. But what do they lose? They are certain that they will have to lose their culture. They are certain that they have to lose their religion. And they're not certain that children today will be able to get economic benefits in the future, but they're certain you lose their religion. I think this is a more important interest compared to their side of the house, and we won the first issue. But secondly, will China change? We told you under our side of the house that there are structural reasons as to why China, unlike the characterization that they wanted to outdate, that will change. We told you one, because of the alliances that the Uyghurs have and are growing alliances because more and more people are skeptical of China. But two, because of the increasing resistance that exists. Their comparative analysis would say, oh, these things never work in a certain without showing us why the image of China isn't important, and it should prove it why it is important for them to get the deals that they want. But even if we buy their assertions that disprove these two premises, we give you another premise coming from my speech to prove why it's still very likely for us to change, even if we don't get other resistance, even if we don't get alliances. And that is the argument about asymmetric warfare. The importance of using terrorism for instance, and only needing one terrorist to be able to destroy the economic systems under their side. Their response was a misrepresentation. They said, well, the Uyghurs have not much material wealth, they have not much resources, they can't launch an attack. We concede they won't win a war, but it's likely that they'll be able to win terrorist attacks because you only need one terrorist to bomb up the stock exchange to destroy the economy that they have. And this is important because if they concede that China is motivated by the economy, then it is more important for them to make sure the economy is stable, which is by promoting peace and order in society, than it is for them to be able to suppress one cultural minority. Why was this argument important? Because they conceded that they'll always live in a suboptimal condition of social integration. And they'll never get the perfect interest of Uyghurs because they will never have their identity. But at least on our side of the house, we get a chance to make sure that Uyghurs become free from the oppression of the Chinese people. That we can protect the culture that they necessarily want. And we think that it's better for us to take this chance because death is not as important as your ability to fight for your own identity. We oppose. Thank you.
Very simple questions here. First, any Uyghurs can meaningfully practice their religion in Uyghur. Secondly, will their resistance work? Thirdly, will China change? And lastly, our economic benefits. On the idea of can Uyghurs meaningfully practice their religion, Yeno concedes that even in their world, you can't easily practice your religion. That is exactly what we've been claiming from the start. The problem that China has is not with the existence of religions, but with those religions being in open defiance of Chinese ethos. That is exactly why we told you that even in our world, you can continue to speak in Uyghur and pray to Allah in private. However, what China has a problem with is you actively teaching Uyghur in schools, is you actively broadcasting the Azan in the public. That, the only response to that comes out in opposition to it. When they say Chinese surveillance is too intrusive. As much as we as a reasonable people think that China is an intrusive state, we still don't think that it is a state that has a CCTV camera in every house, or is this like that is to suggest that you can still go ahead and talk to people in your own language when you're at home. But more importantly, we told you that the characterization of China is that of a state that is willing to shut you down when you are openly defiant, but it can still give you certain degrees of private accommodation. That is exactly what they've done with the Catholics. Please note that argument was never rebutted in principle, because the value of their argument was that once the Catholics were far more accommodative of with the Chinese state, China too became accommodative of them and allowed them to practice their religion in private as long as they were supportive of China. Also, alternatively, they have to defend the world, while every Muslim woman has to wear a hijab irrespective of the threat of her facing a bomb attack. It's unfeasible for them to simply assert that for us, everyone can die, but their religion is of utmost importance, because they haven't told you why every single Uyghur Muslim must be forced to make that choice. In their world, they haven't guaranteed to you any meaningful practice of religion, and in the absence of that, they can't come up here and say that people should be forced to kill in light of a religion that is not even being meaningfully allowed to them. The only argument then is, your economic benefits are also speculative. It's slightly unfair for side opposition to come up here and say that you will never be treated the same as a Han majority. You will face microaggressions in the vote space, because that is something that we concede to. Any minority in a majoritarian state does face certain amounts of microaggressions and is never the same. But that is not arguments against that minority being assimilated in the majority culture.
The argument is that even black people today continue to face microaggressions in schools. But is that an argument for black people not going to schools altogether or not being employed altogether? Of course not. Theirs is a world whether people from the Uyghur minority are never even allowed entry into schools or never even taken into jobs. Ours is the world where we get those things, we conceive those things comes with certain microaggressions. So that's food on your table and no violence is far better than endemic poverty and starvation. They haven't been compared. That's hell. The only thing they come up here against is that your resistance can work. We told you right from the start, you're 0.2% of the population, no military backing, no international support. Your resistance will be absolutely crushed with brutal violence. They have to come up here and defend a genocidal Chinese state going against a guerrilla warfare practicing like minority. Please come up here and envision the consequence of that. It's literally the second Holocaust. I have no idea why a side would be willing to defend that too without any tangible assertion, or why people must be willing to die but not give up on their religion that is as authoritarian as any other system you can ever think of. The only argument that they then bring about is, you know what, China will change. But if the argument is that China cares about its international image, we told you China will also be willing to accommodate a religious minority that is willing to bend its practices in favor of being accommodated. They never dealt with the premise of China actually being accommodative of religious minorities, but more importantly, they also didn't deal with the premise of China being absolutely brutal towards people who seek to resist. That is the reason. Thank you.